everybody. Welcome back to this issue of Staffing Monthly. I am really excited to have today's guest. He's somebody that I've had a chance to get to know for really over the last year or so, and we've realized that we're very aligned in what we want to see for the industry. And he's somebody that actually leads the premier global organization that focuses on research for the staffing industry and the entire staffing ecosystem. And it is my distinct pleasure to welcome you, Barry Asin, the president of Staffing Industry Analysts, to Staffing Monthly. So thank you for being here.
Dan, thank you for having me. I'm delighted to be here with you, and it's been great getting to know you more and getting to know the work that you do, and I'm enjoying the collaboration.
I love it. I love it. And I don't know if we're both like original upstate New York guys, if that's what draws us together, or if it's the passion for the staffing industry, or all the above. But I generally
There are
get
a bunch
fired up
there are a
chatting
bunch
with
of
you.
connections for sure, and we were just my buddies in Buffalo are all still digging out of the snow this winter, so I'm happy to be in Northern California right now. But
Yeah, I bet you are. I bet you are. And just fresh off of a trip from Europe. Yeah.
yeah, we were just there. We did Executive Forum Europe. So we do every year our Executive Forum here in North America, and every year for the past 5 or 6 years, maybe a little longer, we've been doing Executive Forum Europe over in London, and so we were just there. I apologize. I think I've lost my voice a little bit from the trip, but it was really interesting and exciting to see what's going on in the European market, and some things the same with the U.S. and some things that are different as well.
I definitely want to get into that. And actually, that's a good segue. So why don't we start with that piece first, actually? So what are what are some of the things that are different that you're seeing that are distinctly different about the staffing industry in the US versus Europe or other parts of the world?
Yeah, I mean, first off, I think it's important to say that at its core, this business is pretty much the same anywhere you go. And it's not that complicated, right? There's workers and there's work that needs to be done, and who's going to make that match? And so that doesn't really change. But I think the the legislative and legal environment that
Mm,
that staffing operates in is different everywhere you go. I think people in the US, we tend to think of the market here as like that's the world, and it's a
yeah,
huge market. But the lots of places in the world, things are quite different, and so staffing is much more heavily regulated in Europe, and it varies. The UK is maybe more lightly regulated, and then you get into on the continent, it's more heavily regulated, and that changes the business some, and it changes the business model a little bit. For instance, you get into Germany, and there, it's almost all like a bench model. I mean, you're required as an
yeah.
employer, if you don't have work for people, you still got to keep paying them. So it's much more like a consulting business.
Wow.
Um, so you can, and we can go down all the different lists of things. But right now, I'd say the big challenge in Europe is they are they are like, and this was both a sad and heartwarming thing, was they're very close to the front lines of what's going on in Ukraine right now.
Yeah.
And so there were a number of people there who were staffing people from Ukraine, who are like Ukrainian refugees, who are working out of London now or working out of the continent, who came to the conference. And it was great to be there, to be supportive of them, and and to just sort of see people trying to make their little part of the world a little bit better. So that
Yeah,
was great.
that's great to be able to provide that sort of sense of community for them. I know a lot of people are they really look to SIA for that, and you guys do an amazing job with that. It's so speaking of that, I know that in the US, everyone's speculating on if there's going to be a recession or not, and if there is, how bad it's going to affect the industry, or is it going to be good, all that. Like, are you seeing any like economic impacts in the staffing industry in Europe?
Well, I think that the economic outlook for Europe is tougher than it is in the US. It's probably they may already be in some sort of recession. Um, every business cycle is different,
Yeah.
and I think this business cycle is maybe the most unique we've ever seen, right? We're a couple of years after the depths of the pandemic. We're into whatever the new normal is now, and we've got some sort of downturn slowdown here that clearly the Fed is trying to engineer a soft landing of some kind to keep inflation under control. So the situation there I think is tougher. The situation here, it's I mean I I think anybody who tells you they know exactly how it's gonna what's gonna happen, I think they're blowing smoke.
Yeah.
So we don't really know. Because we've got this signs of a business slowdown and slowdown in demand. We're seeing that first in the high tech sector, which
Yeah.
is interesting because that's always been the place that's been, really high growth on the typically throughout all the different cycles we've seen. But then we've got this intense talent shortage.
Yeah.
So how that plays out. So even if demand keeps coming down, we've still got basically twice as many job openings as there are workers out there to work. So it's I think it's it might be the best recession ever to be in staffing. Typically, I'm not seeing any signs of like staffing falling off a cliff like happened in 2020, if you remember,
Yeah.
or in 2008 and
Yeah.
9.
Yeah. Lived through both of those. don't
You
don't want
lived.
that again.
So this is a whole different animal. We do lots of data collection. I mean,
Yeah.
our main way of understanding the world is through surveys and data collection. Every other month we do a pulse survey. That's slowing down, but hasn't really turned negative. We have a weekly data indicator we put out with Bullhorn, the SIA Bullhorn Staffing
Yep.
Indicator, where we're collecting data from them on a weekly basis that we try to make look like the industry. That's turned negative in terms of number of workers out there. Um, but it's interesting. You got to remember the other thing to remember is with inflation, you can have the number of workers flat or slightly down and revenue up
Yeah.
since pay rates and bill rates have been going up, which is not a horrible situation for staffing firms if you're able to pass any wages on to your clients.
Yeah. No, I see it the same way. And that's what, we've been working with staffing agencies on is how do you actually navigate that? And how do you leverage the shortage of workers and some of these recessionary indicators to raise your bill rates, pay rates, markups, and so on and so forth, so you can actually achieve the same or higher levels of margin or net profit on lower payrolls. And how do you actively? And this is actually a pendulum one that I'm seeing. Over the last year and a half, I've seen swing one way, and now I'm starting to see it swing back. And the SIA data suggests this is that when worker shortage was really, really bad, when the market was still running hot, agencies had to actively convert their temp to hire or contractor orders to direct hire orders. They were actively working with their clients saying, hey, I'm going to have a better chance of filling this if we can just go a permanent position to headcount for you. And we saw direct, revenue go up versus your contractor revenue. But now that's slowing down at a faster pace. Perm placement, direct hire seems to be slowing down at a faster pace than temp to hire a contractor. And I think it's swinging back the other way. I think because of the uncertainty, employers out there, they're still going to need people, but I think they're going to focus more on contract or temp to hire work, right? Like that's your data suggests the same thing,
Yeah.
right?
Well, typically, I mean, in a typical downturn, you would have temp. Well, I mean, obviously the perm is always the most volatile,
Right.
but you would have temp be a leading indicator. People are cutting their contractors before they're laying off full-time staff, and then bringing back their temps and their contractors first. Um, yeah, I don't. This isn't going to quite be typical. So
No, it's not. And it's on one side, it's always going to be a little bit of, anxiety, but it's going to be fun to go through it, to see where we're at on the
The
other side.
industry will come through it. The thing that, I mean, I think we are, I'm more optimistic than I've ever been about the future of the industry. Um, and the short term ups and downs are always there, and and that's inherent in staffing, right? The model says to your clients, this is just in time talent. This is talent when you need it, and that you don't need to have people on your payroll when you don't need it. So you
Yeah.
flex up and you flex down. That's part of the model. So I think that those cycles are always going to be there, but we've added on to that. This talent shortage is not going away, and cycle or not, I don't see anything in this cycle that would say it's gonna go away. Even at the lower end of the skill spectrum, there's just intense shortage of anything from truck drivers to like to warehouse workers to technicians, all the way up to IT. And the most intense shortage right now is in healthcare, in
Yeah.
nursing, for instance. And we could probably have a whole separate conversation about that. But this talent shortage isn't going away, and so it's a great time to be in staffing. And staffing firms are more valued than ever when talent is short, because clients are willing to pay to get the
Yeah.
talent that they need. So I think it's a really, really interesting. I won't. I'm sure it'll be a little scary at times, but I think it's going to be a great time to be in the industry.
It will, and there's one question I want to ask around this, but you're right, it will be scary, and that's why it's going to be important to align yourself with strong organizations, which I want to segue to in a second. But outside of recessionary indicators or supply demand workforce indicators, are there any other big trends that you're seeing in the industry that like staffing people need to be aware of? Meaning, like, how much is the gig economy affecting things, and do staffing agencies need to respond to that with different processes or technology? Like, any other big trends that are hitting the industry that we need to be aware of for the next kind of 12-18 months?
Yeah, well, I think the biggest thing that we've been tracking, frankly, over the past decade and beyond, for as long as I've been at SIA, we've been tracking the impact of technology and disruptive technology change on the staffing industry. And so when I first started at SIA in 2003, we were tracking this. I had been with Adecco for a dozen years before that, and working as head of strategy, among other things, there. And we were very worried back then about job boards disrupting the staffing industry.
Yeah.
So technology driven change disrupting the staffing industry. 2003, when I joined SIA, the big thing we were talking about was VMS and
Yep.
technology driven change disrupting the staffing industry. People were angry. Like, we had a conference on VMS in like 2003, 2004, called VMS Decision. I think it was 2003. People were throwing stuff at us because we were talking about, hey, this VMS thing is coming. And, it's going to ruin the staffing industry. Anyway, here we are. The staffing industry is 3 times as big as it was back in 2003, but it's different.
Yeah.
And so, here we are in 2022, hard to believe, looking at 2023, and technology driven change is back at SIA. And of course, it's it's more intense than it's ever been before, and there's all sorts of technology driven change. The big thing we've been tracking the last 5-6 years is the growth of platforms, and this idea of recruiterless connection between clients and candidates. Think of the Uber of staffing. Who is going to be the Uber of staffing? Um, it's just because in the past technology driven change didn't completely disrupt the industry doesn't mean that for sure it won't in the future. But I still see plenty of of opportunity and plenty of reason to say that, hey, recruiters are not going away. But a lot of the mundane stuff that recruiters did, the sort of low value added stuff may well get automated. If you think about Uber and what they did to taxi dispatchers, picking up the phone on the
Yeah.
radio, calling the taxi driver, and then the taxi driver's lying about where they were and how long it was going to take them to get there. All these things that technology has actually made better in a lot of ways. For staffing, I think some of that's going to happen. It's already actually, we're in the middle of it right now in healthcare. Like we talked a lot about this at our gig economy conference, at our healthcare staffing conference, platforms really changing and disrupting nurse staffing. But plenty of growth still going on there. Not sure how that's going to play out in the rest of the industry, but I have some ideas on that. But anyway, you can tell I could get going on this for a while, Dan. That's a huge one. The other thing I just wanted to throw out was remote work.
Yeah.
Um, so, it's easy to just like at this point, just sort of go like, yeah, of course, remote work. It's like, but um, in 2019, we weren't talking about remote work as like a
Nope.
major impact to the industry. And I think we've all learned that not only for your internal staff, but for your temporary workers themselves, they don't necessarily have to be, and for many more jobs than in the past, they don't have to be in the local location where they were. So the great news for staffing firms is if you can convince your clients that that work doesn't need to be done on site, you have a global labor pool you could tap for,
Yeah.
depending on the type of work. I mean, certainly you have a regional labor pool in your
Yeah.
time zone, maybe a national labor pool, potentially a global labor pool. And so there's a lot of convergence between models there. I think as we look to the future, that's one of our big themes is just that it's going to be harder in 5 years, certainly in 10 years, to tell the difference between like a typical staffing firm and these talent platforms like Upwork and
Yeah.
other, TopTal and, all those sorts of different networks. They're all starting to look more technology when you need it, and humans when you don't need the technology, when you need help.
And I think that's, I mean, that's a great observation. And for me, when I hear that, I think how far the staffing industry goes or insulates itself or protects itself against, that type of threat of technology is how where quality control, the preference of quality control lies. If the client really wants to take the client control responsibility on, then a recruiterless platform could work for them, right?
Yep.
Like with an Upwork, like you can see ratings, you can see reviews, but no one is really screening or vetting those people. There's no one that's really putting eyes and, kind of interviewing people. Like you kind of get what the system says they are. And it's still a little bit of the roll of the dice. And sometimes it works great and sometimes it doesn't, right? And that's just the nature of it. But if a client is not able or willing to take quality control on, then they're going to have to rely on a professional
Right.
recruiter. So if I'm advising anybody in this industry that's paying attention to this, I would say focus on making sure that your recruiting team process efforts are highly concentrated on being quality control experts to make sure that the quality that you're putting through is exceptional and that you're also showcasing it in a way through ratings and reviews because we've very much transitioned into that type of I guess consumer society. That's kind of the
Yeah.
way I see it as the big linchpin for us
I,
is
th- I
quality
think that's
control.
I think that's a great insight on it. And there are some basic strategic choices that staffing firms have, and particularly some of the larger firms tend you can either go sort of all in on technology, and like you build your own platform, you automate your as many of the processes as you can, or you go the other way and you become the very best at finding the hard to find talent in a particular niche or area or geography, whatever industry, whatever your thing is. I don't think that's always going to be highly valued, is the people that can really dig into those areas. And I think there also is a part of recruiting that we've maybe underappreciated a little bit, which is, it really is about convincing imperfect candidates to take imperfect jobs, and imperfect clients to accept imperfect candidates. There's a real sales element
Yeah.
to recruiting. And I think you should never underestimate the value of that. Um, and then the only other thing I'll say is that you've got to continually up your game, because yes, Upwork, for instance, is this platform, and we use it all the time. We've got people all over the world helping SIA with work,
Yeah.
researchers and programmers and writers and things like that. But they also, they're adding service on top of that. They've got a whole layer. Like if you need a recruiter to go do all this stuff for you and you don't want to use the platform, they've got that. They've got that as well. I think they also even have like they'll partner with staffing firms. Companies like that are,
Really?
they see an opportunity. Like if you've got candidates, you can like get them out onto these platforms, and
That's
and
interesting.
find a way for your spare capacity. So it's a really interesting time, I think, to, it's the industry is not staying still. I think, the people who are in trouble are probably the ones who are not listening to your, not paying attention here, right? They're just like, yeah, I'm just doing what I'm doing. I'm going to keep doing it forever. It's like, that's the scariest thing I see out
Yeah,
there right
that doesn't work that way. I hate to say it, but in business in general, you're either growing or you're dying,
now.
and
That's pretty much it.
so
There
there's
was, I do a, I bike ride through the Stanford University campus. It's right across from where I live in Palo Alto, California. And
awesome.
on the wall of the practice field in giant letters there, it's like the quote from their coach, which is, you're either getting better or you're getting worse. There is no staying the same.
It's true. That is
Makes
the
sense.
true
That
thing. The world just moves way too fast for,
yeah,
for
yeah,
complacency to let you hang out. So, so this insight is goes core to why I wanted to have you on the show here, and that's this sort of when I think about SIA, I think about this is a group of people that are looking out for the industry, that you're paying attention to all of the things out there that me as a staffing leader, I just can't, right? Because as a staffing leader, you only have so much bandwidth to focus on the growth of your organization while glancing up and keeping your eyes on the horizon. But then there's this whole other world out there. And that's one of the benefits of being in, a member of SIA. So, but you've got all this other stuff. And I don't want to make this like a sales pitch for SIA by any means, but I don't think people fully understand the value that members get out of it. I'd only recently learned about the growth advisory board. I say recently, within the past year. I had no idea. So can you just, in a nutshell, just from your own experience, like why do you care so much about advancing the growth of SIA, and what value do these types of groups provide to their staffing members?
yeah. Well, right. I think that, first off, it can be really lonely having your own staffing business. We're all about, the CEO and top executives of staffing firms, and how to help them. And so our mission is inform, connect, and elevate. So we've got all sorts of information. People can go on our website, and just they can get our daily news, and that's something anybody can just go and sign up to subscribe for. So keep informed about what's going on in the industry. Um, for those who want to go further, right, we publish over 200 research reports a year on all sorts of topics, all like around how technology is changing, but anything around strategic decisions that leaders in staffing businesses are making. That's really our mission. Then is to connect and to help elevate the industry. We do the connection part, a lot of that through our conferences and events, our webinars, and all this sorts. There's all sorts of different ways to get information out to people, but really we're looking to, my thing has been that this idea that you're either getting better or you're getting worse, and so we hope to try to make as much of the industry better and more professional than it has been in the past. That's what we're all about. There's a lot of different ways to do that. The growth advisory board that you mentioned, that really came from my friend and colleague Mike Cleland and I. We wrote a book called Breaking Through about what's different about staffing firms that grow from startup to 100 million and beyond. And out of that came this thought, we found a lot of differences among the staffing firms that grow and the ones that don't. Um, but what we learned from talking to the companies and the CEOs that were there is that, one of the key ways that you grow is you need peer support, and you can't just do it alone. And so we put together the Growth Advisory Board, which are sort of small group peer networking groups for, small number of CEOs, top execs at staffing firms to help them figure out how to grow their business, because it's challenging for sure. And so that's been a lot of fun, I think. And I know, Dan, you've come and spoken with our group there, and really
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Yeah, it was an incredible group, and there's so many things you just shared that I want to just comment on. But the growth advisory board is amazing. If you're an executive in an organization out there in this industry and like you want to get better, because you're right, it's a little bit lonely at the top, but it's an amazing group. I was blown away at how polished these people were. I mean, these people were bright. I mean, they were admirable. I mean, it was amazing how polished these people were and how kind of insightful they were. But the thing that really took me back is how open and connected to each other they were, despite being in different companies. Like when I heard one person mention a victory in their organization, there was somebody else that was there cheering them on, and it's like that's amazing. That was an amazing thing. And then the content, obviously I'm a little bit biased about my content, but I know Mike Cleland, and he's, best of the best, and he's advising these people on a regular basis. So the access to the content is amazing. So that's a huge value. One thing I want to comment on that you mentioned about the surveys. I don't think I've ever told you this. One, I'm a data guy, which which is another reason why we connect so well. But the surveys and the data that you share are amazing value. I cannot count how many times I've personally used them in my past, this data, to go to clients and say, hey, this is why we need to do something a different way, or why we need to raise pay rates, or raise bill rates, or extend contract terms, or like whatever strategic initiative that I had for the organization at the time. I generally could find supporting data, third party, credible data out there that would justify why we needed to do that. And the clients would look at that and like, wow, this is amazing, and so I will tell you that right there, the
Yeah.
data you have is
Well,
worth the price
that
of
does
admission.
warms my heart as as a data guy. And obviously, our goal is to go from data to information to knowledge to action. And but you got to start with having with having truth, or as much close to truth as you can get. And that's our whole thing is we're independent and objective.
Yeah.
That's really our whole mission is to get to the truth about what's going on in the industry and help leaders of staffing organizations make better decisions. And we're also on. Some people may not know this, but we have a whole connection on the enterprise buyer side, our Contingent Workforce Strategies Council, and so we've got a lot of visibility to these large Fortune 500 companies, and I think we're able to bring the lessons learned from those folks back to staffing firms to help. Like if you're focused at all on large accounts, I think we've got a pretty good pulse on what they are up to. And those are the guys who are sort of pushing the industry to
Yeah.
keep getting better and and keep innovating.
So that's interesting right there, that you can actually share those insights about how to kind of navigate that, or how to position yourself as part of their value stream and all that. I think that's great. One last comment I want to share about the book, Breaking Through. And obviously it's right there in your backdrop. And I know there's not a ton, but there's probably more than you realize, but it's the best staffing book that I've ever read. And I've gone through it a couple times, and the disciplines you lay out are you and Mike did an amazing job. Like you balanced data with anecdotal stories and actual real life case studies of companies that have done the work and focused on these disciplines and exceeded the $100 million annual revenue piece. And it's an amazing book. And I would just encourage anybody, if you want to elevate your staffing acumen and really learn from people that have done it, like just go get that book. It's amazing. But here's my segue. So learning from people that have done it, you've got the one of the industry's premier annual conferences coming up globally, the premier conference, the Staffing Industry Analysts Executive Forum. You finally got, we're going back to Miami, and it's been a long time coming.
Yeah,
So,
yes, it has.
so tell me what you're probably excited about this, but what can anybody that attends the Executive Forum get from this year's conference?
Yeah. Well, I get pretty excited about it because I put the program together. I'm the every each of our conferences has a lead, somebody at SIA, one of our analysts, who is the leader on the conference. The executive forum is one of my projects, and so we've just if you go to our website at staffingindustry.com, you can find the program up there. But the theme this year is the next generation of staffing, and it's really about the changes. I mean, this is our whole thing: is just let's try to understand what's changing in the industry and where, as Wayne Gretzky says, where is the puck? You don't skate to where the puck is; you skate to where the puck is going.
Right on.
So we're all about looking around, helping people look around the corner to what's coming. So, we'll have. I typically I'll start with a keynote state of the industry, like the best of our research on where we see the industry going in the next year, 2 years, 5 years. Um, we'll have a keynote panel with some of the CEOs of the largest staffing firms in the world, and very sophisticated players on what they're seeing. This year, I'm really excited. It's the fifth anniversary of Breaking Through, the book, and so we're bringing onto stage all at once, actually, a bunch of the companies that we profiled and a few others who we profiled, who have gone on that journey from 100 to 100 million and beyond. And we're going to talk about what it takes to get to 100 million, but also what it takes to sustain a great organization beyond that. I mean, all of these folks have done amazing things, but the challenges don't go away. So
No,
we're going to do that. We've got some outside speakers, Seth Madison, who's talking about, he's a workforce futurist. He'll be talking about where the workforce is going next. And Kim Lear is a generational expert. So that's
nice.
high on, I've somehow or other, people in the workforce keep getting younger, as far as I can tell. And so I think good advice from Kim Lear on how to manage across multiple generations in the workforce.
That's great. I'm looking forward to the entire session. I mean, it's an amazing conference. I cannot tell you the connections that you make. And I personally like it again because I love strategic leadership. I love making informed decisions through data. I like all of that. And you just package it so well together at the executive forum. And just hearing from Kim about the generational leadership, that's big. Like I know that's since Gen Z is going to be really taking over so much of the workforce. We're actually creating a pretty regular column at Staffing Monthly called the Gen Z Perspective, where we have, Hannah McDonald,
Great
who I
idea.
see as an emerging leader and a Gen Zer that has some amazing perspective on what this generation wants. Things like, same day pay might be of interest. And it's like, wow, like, is that really going to come mainstream? Is it not? So I can't wait to hear the insights that Kim shares and see the rest of the program.
Yeah, we're excited about it. We're excited to be back at the Fontainebleau. This was the conference in 2020 that, like the week before, we ended up having to cancel, which was just heart wrenching. So now we're back there, and it's a beautiful spot. So nothing bad about South Florida in early March, and yeah, I'm looking forward. Dan, I know we've got you lined up to do a session as well, so
I
I think that'll be a lot of fun.
I'm humbled. I cannot even tell you, like from have been in the audience and seen the speakers, and then just having a sneak peek at the agenda and hearing some of the speakers you have for this event and some of the people that are going to be kind of aligned with me on the last day. I don't know how I snuck in. I don't know if I got in the back door on this one. I don't know, but like
I
your
think
bouncer was looking the other way or something. But I'm grateful to be a part of it.
it should be fun. And yeah, so anyway, I hope that'll be, I encourage folks to check that out. And, if there's anything else, I think that, you can always send me an email at basin@staffingindustry.com, or go to our website. And, we're always happy to be a resource to help take the industry to the next level.
Awesome. Well, Barry, I appreciate it. I'll get all of those links on the page right here around the video so people can go directly there. They can check out, the executive forum. They can see more about staffing industry analysts and get in contact with you either via LinkedIn or your email. So grateful to have you here and sharing wisdom and providing some insights on what's on the horizon for our industry.
Well, thank you, Dan. Thanks for having me. It's great. It's great to chat with you.